At 8:11 p.m., Marcus was standing in his kitchen, staring into his refrigerator like it might offer him a solution. It didn't. Inside were 3 condiments, a half-empty carton of eggs, and a bag of spinach that had crossed from healthy into optimistic. He closed the door, leaned against the counter, and exhaled through his nose. He wasn't hungry enough to cook. He wasn't motivated enough to go out. He was exactly tired enough to make a bad financial decision. His phone vibrated on the counter. A notification lit up the screen, free delivery for the next 12 minutes. That was all it took. 25 minutes later, Marcus was tracking a little animated scooter on a map, watching it make unnecessary turns while reassuring himself that this was fine. He ordered a burger, fries, and a drink. Nothing fancy, nothing indulgent. The total came out to $39.84. If he had gone to the restaurant himself, it would have cost $18. Marcus didn't do the math. He rarely did. The app had already done something better. It had bundled the damage into one clean number and spread the pain across words like service, delivery, and taxes. Nothing felt like the main culprit. Nothing felt outrageous on its own. When the food arrived, it was warm enough. The fries were soggy. The burger looked like it had been in a minor accident. He ate anyway. Marcus is not irresponsible. He works in tech. He budgets. He invests. He listens to podcasts about money on his commute. If you asked him whether paying an extra $20 for the same meal made sense, he'd laugh and say no. But that question never appears when he's tired. That's the trick. What Marcus doesn't notice, what almost nobody notices, is that this kind of transaction doesn't live in isolation. It repeats, quietly, casually, disguised as normal life. A rideshare instead of public transport because it's raining. Same-day delivery instead of picking it up tomorrow. Pre-cut ingredients because chopping feels like work. Subscriptions you meant to cancel but never quite got around to. Each decision is small, forgettable, emotionally reasonable. Together, they form a leak. Not a dramatic one. No alarms. No overdrafts. Just a steady siphoning of money in exchange for the absence of friction. This is the real product being sold in the modern economy. Not goods, not services, but relief. Relief from effort. Relief from waiting. Relief from thinking. And that relief is priced aggressively. The system works because your brain is bad at weighing discomfort against money, especially when the discomfort is immediate and the money is abstract. A 10-minute walk feels heavy right now. An extra $15 feels theoretical. One is physical. The other is symbolic. So your brain chooses comfort. Over and over again. Platforms understand this better than most people understand themselves. They don't advertise savings. They advertise ease. They remove steps. They store your card. They remember your preferences. They learn exactly how tired you need to be before resistance collapses. By the time you're making the choice has already been engineered. The most dangerous part isn't the price. It's the invisibility. Nobody ever says, I spend too much money avoiding minor inconvenience. That doesn't sound like a problem worth worrying about. It sounds like a lifestyle perk. But run the numbers long enough, and the story changes. Consider how often you pay extra not to do something. Not to walk. Not to wait. Not to assemble. Not to cook. Not to compare prices. Once or twice a week becomes a habit. A habit becomes an expectation. An expectation becomes a baseline. Soon, anything slower, harder, or less seamless starts to feel unreasonable, even when it used to be normal. That's how the soft drain works. It doesn't demand. It seduces. It doesn't shout. It whispers, you've had a long day. You deserve this. And maybe you do. But the system doesn't care why you're tired. It just knows how to monetize it. What makes this especially effective is that the cost rarely shows up where you expect it. It doesn't feel like overspending. It feels like life happening. Money leaves in fragments. $5 here. $12 there. A subscription you forgot about. A markup you didn't notice. A tip you felt obligated to give. You never see the total. And because you never see the total, you never question it. The economy used to reward patience. Now it penalizes it. Waiting costs more. Doing it yourself costs time. Friction has been reframed as failure instead of a normal part of existence. The result is a strange inversion. The easier life gets, the less tolerant we become of effort, and the more we pay to avoid it. Marcus doesn't think of himself as someone hemorrhaging money. He thinks of himself as busy, efficient, modern. But modern convenience isn't free. It's just built quietly. And the bill doesn't arrive monthly. It arrives decades later, disguised as, "I thought I'd have more by now." This isn't about guilt. It isn't about never ordering food or rejecting comfort entirely. It's about awareness. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And once you understand what's actually being sold to you, not speed, not service, but the removal of mild discomfort, you start asking a different question. Not, is this worth it? But what am I training myself to avoid? That question changes everything. The most important thing to understand about modern convenience is this: it did not emerge naturally. It was designed. The friction you no longer feel, the waiting, the effort, the comparison, the second thought, was not removed out of kindness or progress. It was removed because friction is expensive for companies and incredibly profitable to eliminate. Every extra step between you and a purchase is a chance for doubt. Doubt kills conversion. So the system evolved to protect you from doubt by exhausting it before it ever has a chance to form. Safeguards, one-click checkouts, auto-filled addresses, default tips, pre-selected options, subscriptions that renew quietly in the background. None of this is accidental. The real innovation wasn't delivery or speed. It was psychological compression, collapsing the distance between desire and action until they are nearly indistinguishable. Once that gap disappears, thinking becomes optional. Human beings are especially vulnerable in this compressed state because we are terrible at evaluating trade-offs that live on different timelines. Effort is immediate. Money loss is delayed and abstract. You feel one in your body. You only see the other in a statement weeks later, mixed in with dozens of other numbers. Your brain treats those two costs as if they exist in entirely different worlds. So when given the option between doing something mildly annoying right now or paying a slightly higher price that you want truly register, your brain chooses relief almost every time. This is not a character flaw. It's a wiring issue. Behavioral scientists have a name for this bias, but the name doesn't matter nearly as much as the consequence. The consequence is that entire industries can be built on charging people to avoid moments they'd rather not feel. Not pain, not hardship, just minor resistance. That's the brilliance of it. The inconvenience being sold away is never dramatic enough to justify careful analysis. Nobody sits down to rationally debate whether they should walk 10 minutes or pay $10. The question is framed emotionally, not financially. I'm tired. I don't feel like it. I just want this done. And the system responds instantly. What looks like convenience is actually a toll road built around your attention span. Once companies realized this, everything changed. They stopped competing on product quality alone and started competing on how little effort they required from you. Whoever removed the most friction won. This is why the most successful platforms don't just deliver faster. They make alternatives feel unbearable. Grocery stores became overwhelming. Cooking became too much. Assembly became a nightmare. Waiting became a waste of time. Notice how the language shifted. Normal activities were rebranded as problems. And problems, conveniently, come with solutions, priced just high enough that you won't question them when you're tired. There's another layer to this that makes it even more effective: habit formation. The first time you pay for ease, it feels indulgent. The 10th time feels justified. The 50th time feels normal. Eventually, the idea of not using the convenient option feels strange. This is how expectations reset. Once your baseline shifts, inconvenience stops feeling temporary and starts feeling offensive. The tolerance you once had quietly disappears, and with it, your ability to opt out. At that point, you're no longer choosing convenience. You're defending your new normal. This is where pricing power comes in. Once a platform becomes your default, the price stops being the main decision factor. Fees creep upward. Subtle markups become permanent. Promotions vanish. The same service costs more, but now the alternative feels like work. And work, you've been trained to avoid. What's especially dangerous is that none of this feels reckless. The amounts are small enough to escape scrutiny, but frequent enough to do real damage. It's financial erosion, not financial collapse. A few dollars to avoid carrying groceries. A few more to avoid cooking. A few more to avoid waiting. A few more to avoid comparison shopping. You don't notice the water rising because it's warm. This is why smart people fall into the trap just as easily as anyone else. Intelligence doesn't protect you from systems designed around human behavior. In some cases, it makes you more vulnerable because you're better at rationalizing. You tell yourself you're optimizing. You tell yourself your time is valuable. You tell yourself you deserve ease. And sometimes you're right. But most of the time, what you're actually doing is trading money for a slightly different version of the same leisure you were going to have anyway. The hour you saved didn't become productive. It became passive. Scrolling replaced walking. Streaming replaced assembling. The time didn't generate value. It just changed shape. The system counts on this. If convenience truly converted into income, the math might work. But for most people, it doesn't. Salaries don't increase because dinner arrived faster. Savings don't grow because groceries were delivered. The only thing that grows reliably is spending. And once spending becomes automatic, it becomes invisible. This is why the most effective convenience products don't feel like purchases at all. They feel like infrastructure, like something that simply exists, unquestioned, woven into daily life. You don't think about the cost of the road when you drive on it. You just drive. That's the end game. To make frictionless spending feel as natural and unexamined as turning on a light. By the time you stop to ask whether it's worth it, the habit has already done its work. And that's the real danger. Not the fees, not the markups, but the slow reshaping of your tolerance for effort. Because the less discomfort you can tolerate, the more power the system has over you. The most uncomfortable part of the convenience economy isn't how much it costs in a single month. It's how long it stays with you. When people finally try to calculate the impact of all these small, easy decisions, they usually start too conservatively. They remember delivery meals, but forget the subscriptions. They count grocery fees, but ignore the markups. They remember the big purchases and miss the dozens of quiet ones that never felt worth tracking. But the money doesn't care whether you noticed it. Imagine someone who spends an extra $300 a month avoiding minor friction. That's not extravagant. That's not reckless. That's 1 or 2 deliveries a week, a few subscriptions, premium shipping, pre-made food, and the occasional, "I'll just pay to get this done." $300 a month becomes $3,600 a year. Left alone, it disappears. Invested consistently, it becomes something else entirely. Over a working lifetime, that money compounds into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not because of genius, not because of hustle, simply because it was allowed to stay. This is where the story changes from personal preference to structural consequence. The convenience economy doesn't just charge you now. It charges your future. Quietly, patiently. And the trade is almost never explicit. You don't feel like you're giving up security. You feel like you're buying relief. But relief is temporary. The cost is permanent. What makes this especially painful is that the effort you're avoiding isn't actually that large. It only feels large because your tolerance for friction has been steadily lowered. Tasks that once felt neutral now feel exhausting, not because they changed, but because you did. This is the hidden effect no one warns you about. Convenience doesn't just remove effort. It removes resilience. When everything is optimized to be easy, any resistance feels personal. Any delay feels unfair. Any task that requires patience starts to feel like a burden instead of a normal part of being alive. And the less capable you feel, the more you pay to avoid proving yourself wrong. This is why the system works so well. It doesn't just sell solutions. It quietly weakens the muscles that would make those solutions unnecessary. The result isn't laziness. It's dependence. Dependence on delivery. Dependence on speed. Dependence on frictionless defaults. Once that dependence forms, opting out feels harder than opting in, no matter the price. But here's the part that matters. This is reversible. Not through extreme discipline, not through denial, and not through turning life into a punishment. It starts with awareness. The first shift is simply noticing the premium. Not judging it, not shaming yourself for it, just seeing it clearly. The moment you recognize that a decision costs $15 to save 10 minutes, the spell weakens. The second shift is friction on purpose. Not friction everywhere, just enough to slow impulse down. Removing apps, turning off one-click purchases, making convenience slightly less convenient than it wants to be. The system removed friction to control you. You add it back to regain choice. The third shift is rebuilding tolerance for small effort. Cooking a simple meal, walking to pick something up, assembling something yourself, waiting an extra day. Each time you do, you're not losing comfort. You're reclaiming competence. And competence compounds just like money does. What changes isn't just your spending. It's your relationship with effort. Tasks stop feeling like enemies. Discomfort stops feeling like failure. You begin to trust yourself again. That trust is worth more than the money. Because the real danger was never that you were overspending. It was that you were training yourself to believe you couldn't handle small things. The convenience economy thrives on that belief. It needs you tired, doubtful, and just uncomfortable enough to pay. The moment you tolerate a little friction, you step out of the system it built for you. Marcus didn't quit convenience overnight. He didn't swear off delivery or cancel every subscription in a dramatic purge. He just started asking one question before tapping buy. Is this saving me effort or avoiding it? Sometimes the answer was worth the money. Often it wasn't. And over time, those small pauses changed the direction of his finances without changing the quality of his life. That's the quiet power here. Not restriction, not guilt, just awareness. Every convenience you pay for is a vote. Not just for how your money is spent, but for what kind of person you're becoming. Someone who treats effort as an enemy, or someone who sees it as an investment. I've spent an unhealthy amount of time thinking about how this system works so you don't have to. If this made you look at your habits a little differently, sit with that. The next time you feel tired and reach for the easiest option, notice the moment. That pause is where control lives. And if you want to keep noticing things like this, the quiet systems shaping your money, your behavior, and your future, you already know where to find me. We'll see you next time.